Hi, Misha here. Last time, at least when we talked about TIE fighters, we looked at the variants. The Bomber, the Striker, Interceptor, and a couple of TIE advances. This time, I wanted to talk about the original TIE fighter, the TIE LN, versus the First Order TIE fighter, the TIE/FO. And also compare original titanium from around 2004-2005 time period to the newer Black Series titanium, which were made from about 2015 to about 2018, and kind of see if there's a clear quality difference and what have you. So let's have a little short refresher on the original TIE here. Now, the first time we talked about the TIE LN, the TIE line fighter, I showed you the Hot Wheels Elite, the larger model. Not huge, it's about 6 inches or so. This time, though, we have, the original titanium from, I think these came out originally in 2004, running through about 2009 in the whole series. But this is just your basic TIE fighter in die-cast metal. It is pretty much all metal, including the solar panels. Notice kind of the thick spoke lines there in die-cast. The body's metal. Really the only plastic here is the cockpit lid, the door on top. And well, of course, the cockpit, the glass front. And that's about it. In universe, this is about 6.5 meters by 6.5 meters and 7.5 to 8 meters tall. Yeah, TIE fighters are really tall. No landing gear, no life support, no shields, no hyperdrive. It's basically a guy in a spacesuit in a ball, but it does have powerful twin laser cannons, and it does have quite good twin ion engines. That's where it derives its name from. Very reliable engines, and it's primarily powered by its solar arrays. And it has enough air on board and emergency consumables to sustain the pilot for about 2 days. Just for a long patrol or in case he's stranded somewhere. And it does also have an ejection seat because why not? And it can operate in an atmosphere, although it's not ideal. Its top speed is around 1200 kph there. Yeah, this is the basic fighter of the Empire. Work began during the Clone Wars, and these were phasing in immediately after the Clone Wars, slowly but surely replacing the V-Wing. And a standard Star Destroyer would carry about 72 of these. And that was seen throughout the entire original trilogy. Well, after years of waiting, what did the sequel trilogy and the First Order give us? Here we have the so-called TIE-FO for First Order. And if it looks much the same, it really is. They weren't exactly adventurous when designing this for the new film. Even less so than they were with the X-Wings. And this is again part of the Black Series with the titanium addendum, because by the time of the sequel trilogy, the original titaniums were long out of print. Now this one is a lot lighter. The center is metal. The canopy does still open. But the wings, the solar panels, are plastic now. Wish my canopy stayed closed a little better. Oh well. Now the good thing is they have probably more appropriate spokes here. They're not as pronounced. And they're probably thin, more like the originals. But it does not give it that heft. It's a very light thing. This one is easily 3 times the weight. Now in universe, it's actually said, at least some people claim, that the Thai FO is slightly smaller than the original Thai. I'm not sure if I believe that or not. Comparing the two ships here, it is slightly smaller, dimensionally speaking. So externally, it looks virtually the same. But in universe, the changes are internal. For example, it has improved higher capacity power cells with the, I guess you'd say, solar panels being much more effective. It also has updated computers, both avionics and targeting. And it has basic minimal shielding. So nothing like an X-Wing. Maybe more like found on an A-Wing. One that could be a good navigational shield or take 1 or 2 laser hits. It has slightly uprated engines. It's a tiny bit faster, but really it seems to be about the same, and the speed and agility department's around 1200 kph in atmosphere. And yeah, still no life support, still just 2 linked laser cannons. The Thai FO can have a mount for a small launcher, projectile launcher, but it's not standard. It seems to be optional only. And one thing it had to give up, since it's basically the same hull size, but now we have a small shield generator, is it only has a day's worth of oxygen and other consumables for the pilot. But that's just in universe. In reality, they basically just redid the Thai, slightly changing the look, but I'm not even sure how much you can say that. And that really is a problem. And I have ideas why they did it. But if you're wanting to sell toys, if you're wanting to do that, either just keep the same Thai, saying that they're using old Thais still, or change it and make it still look like a Thai. A great example of how to do this is the Thai Striker. Yeah, it's from the new, and it definitely looks like a Thai, but it's definitely new. And if you look at the original trilogies, you started off with the TIE Fighter and the TIE Advanced. And then in episode 5, we got the TIE Bomber, and for what it's worth, the TIE Shuttle. And then in episode 6, Return of the Jedi, we got the TIE Interceptor. They were all clearly linked, but different. And even in modern times, we did get the TIE Advanced V1, the Inquisitor TIE. And again, it's different enough that it's kind of interesting. Harkens back just as much to Phantom Menace as it does the X1 TIE Advanced. And we've seen various things throughout Rebels and Clone Wars too. They played it very super safe with the Thai FO, and I think it was definitely to their detriment. There's a time and a place for that, and there's a time to be adventurous. And that's one thing George Lucas seemed to get. Every time he did a new film, he gave us some new ships. He kept some old ones around too. He kept doing this through the prequels, but he would always give us some truly new ones, but yet still fit in the universe. Of course, there was one other tie from The Force Awakens. Meet the TIE SF, the TIE Special Forces. Can you tell which is which? Again, if they wanted to keep a classic TIE in the movie after the long dormant period, fine. But since they were doing 2, I really don't know why. And this is it here. When they did this version, they didn't get a little more adventurous, or at least base it on something like the TIE Interceptor, or what have you. Or even Darth Vader's TIE Advanced would have been a good one. Now the purpose of this was so both there we go, Poe and Finn could escape the Star Destroyer together and become inconsequential characters in the succeeding movies. But anyway, at that time we didn't know this in 2015. So it did have some changes. Yeah, it was a 2-seater, kind of back-to-back seating, reminiscent, at least in a little bit, like the Snowspeeder from Empire Strikes Back. It is a very similar TIE, basically dimensionally identical. Has the 2 laser cannons in the front, 2 solar panels, but the back did have to be redone a bit. The engines had to be moved further out onto the pylons to give a rear viewing area for the second person. And he was there either to be an observer and or control a turret. This had a dual heavy blaster or dual light laser turret. And I have to say, I'm not sure how much a turret would help when half of your entire ship is covered up by these big wings. It seems like gimbaling guns would have been sufficient. But anyway, yeah, turret seems kind of wasted on this. More practical on something like a Y-wing when you have a true good field of fire. Anywho, in addition to the extra pair of blasters, lasers, this also had a Warhead Launcher as standard, and it could load at least 2 types of warheads. You see it with the concussion missiles or mag pulse warheads. Presumably also it could fire proton torpedoes. So it was more heavily armed. It also had an auxiliary fuel cell, so it wasn't only reliant on the solar. Whereas the basic TIE FO had very minimal shielding. This actually had pretty decent shielding, at least compared to that. And it had a hyperdrive. Now, it was only class 2.0, so not bad for a fighter of this size, and certainly better than like the TIE Advances from a couple of generations earlier, but still not top of the line, but it'll get you somewhere. On top of that, it had 5 days worth of consumables for the 2-man crew, so it was expected to do longer range missions. And because they would be in the canopy for more time, it did have life support, so you did not have to always wear a suit. On top of that, it had enhanced sensors and whatnot. So on paper, yeah, it's a nice upgrade. But physically, they did very, very little to the model. And that's a shame. I think they really missed a trick to make something quite neat here. Oh well, at least we did get the TIE Striker. And much like with the TIE FO, this is primarily plastic with a metal center area. Much lighter than our original. But again, it's supposed to be the same size anyway. As far as cost, the original TIE was supposed to be about 60,000 credits, and that was for an empire that, while it was pretty well funded, had an entire galaxy, so it needed a lot of cheap fighters. With the TIE FO, it's said to be about 90,000 credits, and that's for a more cash-strapped organization, but also an organization not trying to contain an entire galaxy and with limited pilots to hand. So giving them essentially shields wasn't a bad idea. Interestingly, the Thai Special Forces, the Thai SF here, is said to be 190,000 credits, so more than double that of the standard. Of course, we do have a hyperdrive. We do have an actual power cell, fuel cell. And then, of course, we have life support. So, yeah, that checks out. And we have double the weapons, plus a missile launcher and what have you. Still, yeah, that is more than an X-Wing, which is about 150,000 credits. And I'm not sure you're getting more than an X-Wing's worth of use out of this, but I could be wrong. Also, as far as I know, none of these have proper landing gear. So, yeah. I think they really did miss a trick on these. At least if they wanted to keep this one standard, fine. But then with this one, be adventurous, have some fun. Heck, it would have been nice to kind of see them maybe put some A-Wing or X-Wing features on it just to show that they learned a thing or two from the Rebellion, the Republic. As far as the models themselves, all of these are pretty inexpensive. These were around $5-6 when new, maybe $8, but they are all metal. To be fair, these today are around $4 or $5, at least when they were new. And when you adjust for the deflation of the dollar, they are cheaper, so it should come as little surprise that they have less metal and more plastic. Oh well. It is what it is. But they are extremely similar. So what do you think? Do you like what they did here? Or you like me and kind of think they should have done anything different? Let me know in the comments. As always, if you could, like, share, and subscribe. This is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon.